Hi, I'm John Peterson. I'm a volunteer train car host at Durham Museum. I love talking about railroad history, particularly as it relates to Omaha, Nebraska. And thus I want to show you this photograph. I took this photograph with my Instamatic camera back in 1962. As you can tell, it's not the best quality, but this photograph has been published in at least one book and a couple different magazines. Why? Because it's actually a photograph of one of Omaha's railroad stations, the forgotten station, the Webster Street Station. It's forgotten because hardly anybody knows about it, and hardly anybody took any pictures of it. It's not very impressive compared to the Omaha Union Station and the Burlington Station. Those are impressive buildings, and there are numerous pictures and postcards available of these facilities. But nobody took pictures of the Webster Street Station. It looks more like a warehouse than its passenger station. Yet this station at the corner of 15th and Webster was used by passenger trains for 71 years. Today, the site is used by the Kiewit University. Let me tell you a little bit about the history of this Webster Street Station. It's very interesting. It was built by the Chicago, Minneapolis, St. Paul, and Omaha Railroad, commonly known as the Omaha Road, with construction beginning in July 1885 and the station opening on November 13th, 1885. It was described by the Omaha Daily World this way: another towering beauty has been completed in Omaha. It is one that will not only be appreciated by the citizens, but also by the traveling public. It can be said that this is the finest depot in Omaha. Downstairs are two large commodious waiting rooms, one for the ladies and one for the gentlemen. In the center are ticket offices and restrooms. On the second floor are found the general offices. The article speculated that other railroads would soon join the Omaha Road in using the station. It said, while no definite arrangements have been made for the Chicago and Northwestern Road to run into the station at once, it is believed that the intention of the company and that their plans will be brought about in the near future. There is plenty of room for such a facility. This proved to be prophetic, because other railroads did begin to use the station, which was now known as the Webster Street Station. The Missouri Pacific switched its Kansas City and St. Louis passenger trains from the Union Station from the Union Pacific Station to the Webster Street Station by using the belt line, which was completed on November 21st, 1886. This belt line basically went around the perimeter of the city. The Fremont Elkhorn and Missouri Valley, a subsidiary company of the Chicago Northwestern, a railroad that served western Nebraska, began using the station on April 18, 1887. Another Chicago Northwestern subsidiary, the Sioux City and Pacific, began using the station on December 9, 1889, by its Sioux City train that arrived at the station by crossing the river in Blair and then coming down on the tracks of the Omaha Road. Missouri Pacific even had commuter service. They had commuter service over the belt line that began on July 15, 1888. The trains made 3 stops between the Webster Street Station and the West Side Station, which was located at 48th and Illinois Street. That was then considered the edge of the city. The service was later extended to Portal, at a junction where the Union Pacific and Missouri Pacific tracks cross each other west of Papillion. As many as 6 commuter trains operated each day between Portal and the Webster Street Station by 1890. But the popularity of the service quickly declined when the streetcar lines were extended farther out into the city. By January 1891, the service was cut to just 1 train daily. And this was converted to an Omaha to Auburn local train on October 1892. Despite the loss of commuter trains, Webster Street Station was a busy station. In fact, it began to be called the Webster Union Station. Why? Because 4 railroads used the Webster Street Station. Only the Union Pacific used their station, and only the Burlington used their station. Thus, the Webster Street Station was the only the only station used by more than one railroad. Advertisements in the Chicago Northwestern boasted it was the only Union depot in Omaha. By 1899, 1,500 passengers used the station each day on 13 trains operated by the Omaha Road, the Fremont, Elkhorn, Missouri Valley, the Sioux City and Pacific, and the Missouri Pacific. Yet, despite what seemed to be a glowing future, there was trouble on the horizon. The new Burlington Station opened on July 4th, 1898. The new Union Station opened on December 1st, 1899. To thwart the possibility of some or all of the railroads moving to the new Union Station, the Webster Street Station was enlarged and refurbished at a cost of $30,000, with the public opening held in November 1899, just a few weeks before the new Union Station opened. The passenger area of the Webster Street Station was doubled in size, with a new waiting room and ticket office added to the north of the existing building. The separate men and women's waiting rooms in the existing station, or the old station, they remained, but they were improved, and a lunch counter was established between the 2 men and women's waiting rooms. These changes improved the station, but the opening of the new Union Station had immediate repercussions and not for the better. The Sioux City and Pacific routed its Sioux City passenger train into the new Union Station on January 14th, 1900. The Missouri Pacific decided to shift its mainline trains to the Union Station on April 19th, 1900. These were the Kansas City trains that also went to St. Louis, leaving only the Auburn local terminating at the Webster Street Station. This move of the Kansas City trains to Union Station enabled them to cut 20 minutes off their schedule. The Fremont, Elkhorn, and Missouri Valley constructed a connection between their South Omaha yard and the Union Pacific tracks at Summit in 1902, and that gave them the possibility of having direct access into the Union Station. They decided to take advantage of this on November 22nd, 1903. Although this added 10 minutes to the schedule of the trains, the advantage of the direct connections with Union Pacific and other railroads at the Union Station, including the Chicago Northwestern trains between Omaha and Chicago, clearly outweighed any disadvantages that the longer schedule had. This left just the Omaha Road and the Missouri Pacific local train to Auburn as the only roads using Webster Street Station. And yet this didn't last very long either. Missouri Pacific train was cut back to the West Side Depot at 48th and Leavenworth in an economy measure in 1925. This meant it no longer served the Webster Street Station. The Omaha Road was now the sole occupant. Its 2 daily trains up to Emerson, Nebraska and on to Norfolk were discontinued on November 15th, 1937, leaving them on Damon as the only remaining passenger train using the station. This train served Sioux City by going up the Nebraska side of the river. This train lasted another 22 years until making its final run on June 3rd, 1950. This ended all scheduled passenger train service to Webster Street Station. But there was one train remaining, a tri-weekly mixed train to Sioux City. Now, a mixed train is basically just a freight train that enabled passengers to ride in the caboose if they wanted. There was no published schedule, only a note that if anybody wanted to ride, to contact the agent. The Omaha World Herald described the situation this way. This week, the stubby little train carrying both freight and passengers will have the old Webster Street Station all to itself. This is scarcely an honor. If trains could, they doubtless would have rebelled years ago against pulling into the ugly brick building at 15th and Webster Street. As far back as 1929, railroad officials admitted the station was in sore need of repair. Now remember, this mixed train was the only train left between Omaha and Sioux City on June 3rd. This did not last much longer. 6 weeks later, the track was washed out north of Pender on July 18, 1950, and the railroad decided not to rebuild it. So the mixed train now only operated between Omaha and Pender, and this lasted until 1956. When it was continued, it ended what remained of any passenger service to Webster Street Station. The station was destroyed in a two-alarm fire on September 13, 1965, and was torn down 6 days later. Well, thanks for joining me today. I hope this was interesting. Stay tuned to the Durham Museum's social media for more railroad history.